Okay, so in your kit, you're going to be receiving a subwoofer box, a speaker wire, a thick speaker wire with connectors on one end, the amp to line level input. This is going to connect directly to the OEM Rivian connection point for the subwoofer, the original subwoofer. 18-foot power cable that will connect to the battery, both for Gen 1 and Gen 2. It's the same length, though in Gen 2 we will be cutting this short. Small length of cable for the negative wire, a fuse, and that's it. That's everything for the kit. So box and all the wiring that will be required for you to connect a sub. We will not supply the subwoofer speaker or the amplifier. We do have recommendations, and we'll show those recommendations later on in this video, or it'll be linked in the description for the product. So recommended tools for the install. I recommend some wire cutters, a crimping tool, a set of the fork connectors for wires, wire strippers, some auto trim removal kit, so like the plastic pieces, a drill with the Torx bits, and I'll talk about which Torx bits we're going to need. There's going to be a few that we need, as well as any Torx bits that you may need in order to complete the install. The last thing I also recommend, we're going to use some acoustics sound deadening while I'm in there. The reason why is just to kind of improve sound quality overall. This is actually a box that I purchased from Amazon. This will be my my third install, and I still have plenty of material here. And I believe this is like $60 or $70 off of Amazon. But we're already in there, might as well sound deaden to make everything sound better. Okay, so the sub and the amp combo that we're going to be installing today is going to be the JL Audio 8W V3. This is actually designed around the cubic foot that the sub box was designed around. So this is definitely the sub that I recommend. Also, what's really nice about this is that it hits a heck of a lot harder than you would expect from an 8-inch, or at least when I was younger. The second thing that you're going to want is the amp. The one that I recommend is the CXA 400.1. The reason I recommend this is, one, it's actually correctly sized for this sub, but on top of that, when there is no signal coming from the radio, this shuts off, which is very important, as we are not going to be putting in a remote signal on this amp. So we're only going by the signal power, like the speaker power, for when this shuts off. And this actually shuts off properly. This last thing we're going to also install is the remote bass control. You can snag this one off of Amazon. They're like $35, give or take, somewhere in that neighborhood. And I'll show you how to install this as well, which is nice to have a little bit of control while you're driving around, depending on who's on the car with you. Okay, the first thing we're going to need to do is prep this cavity for the speaker, the subwoofer. So we got to take out the old OEM one. We also have to remove the trim, as well as this bucket here. So we're going to actually open this up all the way, remove everything out of here so that it's more space. And the first thing we're going to do is actually pop open this trim as well as this trim down here to start making it so that it's easier to remove this plastic trim piece so we don't break a clip. Technically, you don't need to remove this, but you run the risk of breaking this clip. Much easier to remove this, and we're going to do the same on the opposite side. Okay, so the first thing we're going to go ahead and do, there is a trim piece here that goes along the back edge with the seat belt. We're just going to pop this open. Be careful with it. This is actually stiff plastic that doesn't bend, so just kind of get in behind. And there's like three or four clips that you're going to pull on. And I'm going to go ahead and set this up as a camera stand. And hopefully you guys can see me there. There's another clip right here. And then a third here. And we're just going to go across all the way and just unclip these until this whole plastic piece comes out. And you do want to take your time, make sure you're not breaking any clips. I have not had any issues with this one unclipping, but just be careful, as this one gets stiff here. So I'm going to use a trim tool to help out. There we go. And pop this one out as well, and we're set. So once it's removed, it should look like this. So that plastic piece is completely removed. Now we're gonna go ahead and lift up on this trim piece right here, which I've just done. There's 2 clips here, as well as a third one down below. You can use a trim tool to help pull that out. And then I'm gonna slowly remove the rubber back from this trim along this edge. Get that off the plastic so that way I can peel this out like so. And that gives me the ability to pull this away right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and peel this away from this edge. And there we go. I got it loose enough. It looks like it just came out just a hair, which is fine. We don't need much more than that. Okay, and we're gonna do the same on the driver's side with the trim panel as well. So we're gonna lift here, popped up like that. We're gonna go ahead and take the rubber out from the side, like so. Okay, after we've removed the rubber from the edge here, that gives us enough flexibility to move this out of the way. We're not asking to have this completely popped out. We're just kind of getting it so that we get some movement, so that when we remove the clip for this one, we don't break this clip that is actually underneath the seat belt. Okay, so next thing we're gonna go ahead and do is remove this trim. And mind you, I've broken this clip 2 or 3 times. It really doesn't affect anything, but just as a heads up. So let's go ahead and remove the trim all the way around the edge. Okay, so we're gonna remove this trim. I'm just gonna go ahead and pull up on this. Again, you can use a trim tool to help yourself out. There's a clip right here that we're gonna go ahead and pop open. And these trim pieces are very particular. They do like to get stuck. There we go. There's 1, 2, 3. Now, this will be a clip here. And then this is the one we're worried about. We don't want to break this one. So I'm gonna lift up and out of the way on this edge, get my fingers underneath here, and pop this up, and then slowly pull it out. And if you've done it right, that clip stays in place. That's the one we're worried about. We're gonna do the same here. I'm gonna go ahead and pop these. And what's really funny is this clip is the one that's usually the hardest, as well as these 2 right here. And I'm gonna swing around to get a little better grip. All right, so we're gonna go switch sides just to make it a little easier. Once you pop the one open, it gets a lot easier. Pop that one, and this is gonna be the hard one. There we go. Same deal here. The clip is underneath, so we're gonna kind of lift this out of the way. I'm gonna stick my fingers underneath. Okay, so what I'm gonna try to do is I'm gonna try to slide the trim tool on the back side of the clip, and then I'm gonna try to lift 4 up. And hopefully that gives me enough clearance to get that out, which it did. There he goes. Okay, we're gonna use a T25 Torx bit, and we're gonna go ahead and remove all the bolts all the way across and all the way around. So we'll go ahead and do that really quick. And now I'm just lifting up on the bucket, just popping it up. There we go. And I've got one more on that side, so I'll switch to that side. Okay. So I'm gonna move the amp out of the way, or excuse me, the subwoofer out of the way. So I'm gonna go ahead and just disconnect it. There's a little clip towards me that you'll lift up, and it's right here on the corner. It's very difficult to see when it's in there, but I'll show you here. So as right here in the corner, you'll have this clip. There's just a little piece that you push down on the wire. So there's this little clip that you push in. It's really easy to take out. It's one of the easiest automotive connectors I've removed. Just lift up and I'll get that out of the way. There's one more that we have to lift up here, like so. That's done, and we'll just take that one out. Okay, at this moment in time, you now have a decision. We're gonna go ahead and sound deaden this. So we're gonna actually put in the sound deadening. It's really easy application. Just put it up against this and fold it down. I'm not gonna show how to do that. There's a million videos out there that do a better job. The main thing is this. This bolt and that bolt over there needs to be clear. This area needs to be left clear, as well as that one, just in case if they ever have to get in here, they don't have to tear apart your sound deadening. So we're gonna do that. When we come back, you'll see this completely done. Okay, so we went ahead and finished putting in the sound deadening. You can see that we kind of covered the back here. This is where most of the sound's gonna be coming from. And then we kind of did a few parts here on the edge on the top, but we really didn't really care about it. It's inside the cabin. It's not really gonna help all that much. You can add more here if you want. It's gonna be minor improvements. It already sounds pretty good. The one thing I do want to highlight, there is a plastic panel here that is attached to the single seat, and it will rattle with the new sub because we are creating some decent bass waves now. So I just put a piece of sound deadening on here. It solves that problem. And then the trim might also rattle. It's really dependent on how well your Rivian's constructed. To each their own. Piece of felt or whatever should help on that, or you could just add a piece of sound deadening so it doesn't rattle at all. That would be just on the trim or between the trim and the metal here. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna go ahead and do is we're gonna go ahead and set up the ground wire to work with our amp. Now, our amp utilizes some Phillips screwdrivers to kind of hold the wire in place, and specifically utilizes hook fasteners. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do is crimp some hook fasteners onto my wire. I'm gonna strip it and just get it ready to go, and then I'm gonna quickly crimp. So went ahead and created that. So this is crimped on nicely and it's ready to go. And this will slide it into the amp and the ground location like so. So we got that one prepped. Next step is we're gonna go ahead and prep the sub box. So when this comes prepared, there's gonna be a total of like 4 nuts, washers on the connectors on the inside. And you can kind of see it in here. There's some gold-plated connectors. If those are actually gold-plated, I owe someone some money. At least they told me they were. Now, what we're gonna go ahead and do is we're gonna leave 1 washer and 1 nut in place to hold these, the speaker, the banana plugs in place. And we're gonna slide our speaker wire for our subwoofer onto each of those posts, red to the furthest one inside, and then we're going to use the nut and the washer that's on the inside. We're going to use these nuts and washers to hold that in place. So let's go ahead and I'm going to do the positive side first. And then I'm going to do the same with the ground. And then there's going to be an additional 2 more nuts in here, and I'm going to use those as lock nuts. So that way it doesn't shake loose when you're listening to your tunes. And then I'm just tightening these nuts with an 8mm wrench to make sure that they don't come loose. All right, so there's actually extra wire here for the speaker. We're gonna use this for the amp to our banana plugs here. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do is just measure the amount that I need to make this easy to remove, but at the same time, leave me a little bit of extra to go ahead and connect the amp. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut this. Remember, measure twice, cut once. I'm gonna go ahead and use that. And there's about 18 inches there left over. Should be about the same. I'm gonna go ahead and cut this. I'm gonna go ahead and strip this. And I'm gonna go ahead and connect this. Positive to positive. negative to negative. And then I'm gonna rest this in place. And if you wanna be careful, you can always cut it a little shorter inside. There's plenty of space there. And I'm gonna line up the JL Audio logo with this corner here, like so. That's gonna be facing the passenger door when you open it. It's more of my OCD kind of showing. This speaker does not come with wood screws, and depending on the subwoofer that you get, or they might come with screws with it. So I'm just gonna put some wood screws into this to seal this onto that. So I'm gonna do that now. So I'm gonna put the trim piece here, and then I'm gonna gently install each of these screws. And similar to installing a tire or tightening a tire, I'm gonna just go opposites. And I'm just making sure that the sub is sealed to the box. So we're not trying to over tighten these. It is OBS for the box. With that done, we can go ahead and just put this into place. Like so. And then we're going to take our OEM connector that's supplied in the kit. I'm going to go ahead and connect this. And we want to keep this signal wire away from any positive or the ground wire as well, so it doesn't get any interference, though this is wrapped nicely, so it should protect it a little bit. And we're just going to kind of get this in place, kind of run it along this edge here so that it's available here to plug into the amp. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to prep for the negative wire, or the ground wire, excuse me. We're going to go ahead and put that in. We've already attached the hook to it, so we're just going to go ahead and lift up that bolt, which is a 13 millimeter, and we're going to slide it in between the rubber and the
you gotta wake the truck up. Oh.
There you go. All right, so here we go. We're going to go ahead and undo this. It's a 13 millimeter bolt. And we want this connector to be under the rubber, so that way we get a good ground. And then we can go ahead and tighten that back up. Don't over tighten it too much. There we go. And this is ready to go to the amp when we go ahead and install the amp. I'm going to go ahead and prep the rest of the speaker wire to connect to the amp as well as the subwoofer, the banana connectors. If you want to add banana connectors to this, you're more than welcome to. I'm just going to slide them through and just connect it. So I'm just going to go ahead and crimp these. I went ahead and added 2 fork connectors to this, and that's going to connect to the amp here on the positive and the negative. So positive is going to be red, negative is going to be black. And then my ground wire is going to go into the ground here on the left, and then I'm going to run the positive, but we're not doing that connector yet because we're going to try to properly size that to our distance that we need to do. So I'm going to go ahead and get a screwdriver and get this prepped with these speaker wires. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and loosen the positive and negative terminals for the speaker. Positive is going to go on the left here. Let's go ahead and get that in, and negative is going to go on the right. And I have them just as far apart from each other as possible, just make sure that it doesn't ground out. Not that I expect any issues, but better to be safe than sorry. And then throughout this entire process, just double check that everything is connected well, that things don't get loose, just like that. I went ahead, and this did come out just a second ago, so I went ahead, re-crimped it. I just went ahead and stripped it a little further back to get a better connection, and that feels good, okay? And then I'm gonna go ahead and prep this side as well. I'm going to go ahead and strip back about 3/8 of an inch on each of these. And I'm going to add some VHB tape to the back here. So I went ahead and added the VHB to the back of the amp. Now this is important to note that if you've never used VHB before, it's completely different than double-sided tape. It's basically a permanent install. It can be removed, but it does take some force. And it does take usually like a scraping tool to kind of get in between the tape and the edge. I was able to remove it from my Gen 1 before moving up to a Gen 2. Okay, now that I've got the double-sided tape or the VHB removed, I'm gonna go ahead and install this inside the truck.
There we go.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead, this is prepped with the VHB. There is a nice point right here that's about 6 or 7 inches away that we're gonna go ahead and mount this, and we're gonna go ahead and slide this, and this fits exactly perfectly in here, and we're just gonna give it some slight pressure. That's how we activate the VHB, and we're gonna go ahead and have that ready to go. So that's in place, and we're good there. Now, we're gonna take the speaker wire now, and we're gonna make sure that negative goes to negative and positive goes to positive. In the banana plugs, there is a spot where there is a hole that goes through the post. So we're just gonna slide this through. As I said earlier, if you want, you're more than welcome to go ahead and use, you could use a fork connector if you really want to, crimp it on. You can use some banana plugs as well. I'm just gonna slide it on, I'm gonna crimp it down and call it done. So I'm gonna do that now and get these in place. All right, so we have the speaker wire connected from the amp to here. Black is on black, red is on red. Red is positive to the amp, black is negative on the amp. We have our signal. We're gonna go ahead and plug that in. And we're gonna go ahead and do input. Okay, so I'm gonna take, and I know I've been using negative and ground interchangeably. It's a fault of mine. I apologize. I'm gonna go ahead and take the ground, and I'm gonna connect it to the ground on the amp. That's gonna be the upper connection. And I'm just gonna go ahead and tighten that down. And again, testing the connections to make sure there's no issues and everything's fine. We have our ground, our positive still open. We have our speaker wire. We have our speaker wire connected to the sub. Sub's installed. And then we have our signal wire coming from the OEM connection to the back of the amp. Okay. Now we're gonna go ahead and start running our positive wire. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna move the seat all the way forward. And then we're gonna come to two connections here. We have a plastic piece here that we're gonna lift up, or excuse me, we're gonna actually pop open left and right. And we're gonna pop this open and there's a bolt underneath. So we're gonna go ahead and do that now. So we're gonna pop these open and there's a bolt under here. And we're gonna pop this one open as well. And I'm just using a trim tool. So these are popped open and there is a large nut on either side. We're gonna go ahead and loosen and remove them completely. I'm gonna go ahead and loosen these. These are tight when you first start it off. It's a 15mm bolt. And there is Loctite on this. I do recommend reapplying the Loctite to these since it is attached to a seat and you want to make sure that this stays safe. You'll also notice that I'm using an extension on this, and that's to not bend the plastic here. Okay, well now we're gonna go ahead and push back the seat. And one side actually has a clip to open up. The other one you actually have access to. I don't get why, but they're 15mm bolts. This time they're vertical. So I'm gonna go ahead and loosen both of them first to make sure that there's no pressure on either one of these. And I'm gonna do this equally as it comes up because this seat's gonna want to naturally move back because it's leaning back further. The center of mass is further to the rear. It's gonna wanna lift up. So you might wanna push down on the seat as you're loosening these to make sure that it doesn't flip on you when you're not ready for it. And I'm gently gonna let the seat twist up like so. And I'm gonna, let's see if I have enough space here. I'm gonna go ahead and rearrange this a little bit. So I'm gonna go up like that. And what I'm trying to do is just create enough space so I can get under here. We have a wire that's connected here to the plastic we can lift up, which is this one. So I'm gonna lift that up. It gives me a little bit more space, and I'm gonna kind of set this aside. And then what I'm gonna go ahead and do is remove this plastic piece to lift it up so I get it out of the way. So I'm gonna do that now. Inside here is the battery, so please be careful. You don't want to touch the negative and the positive at the same time. There's 4 clips. They're pretty easy to remove. And if you remove them all, it should just slide forward. Okay, and we're going to set this aside. And now you have access to the 12-volt battery. So this is for the Gen 2 install, obviously. Gen 1 we would be running along here and going into the firewall. And I'll show that in a separate part of the video. So let's continue on this. We're gonna go ahead and prep the positive power lead. We need to add a fuse, which is supplied in the kit, and we're gonna connect this to this. So I want you to go about 8 inches or so, and we're gonna go ahead and cut. There it goes. Then go ahead and strip that. And I've got about 3/4 of an inch there, here. So I'm gonna slide the cover first. Then there's the rubber grommet. And then slide that in. And then I'm gonna go ahead and tighten this down. Slide the rubber grommet. And then slide my cover on. Okay, pull on that, make sure it's tight. It is. And then I'm going to get the other end of the wire. Slide on my plastic cover first. My rubber grommet. And you'll see I'm twisting the wires just to make it a little easier to get in. Tighten that up, slide in my grommet, and tighten my fuse box. Okay, this does need to be within, I believe it's 2 feet of the battery. Since we're within 8 inches, that meets that need. And what we're gonna go ahead and do is we're not gonna connect this. We're just gonna kind of place it in position under there so that we have enough space here for the our connector here to connect to the battery, but we're not gonna connect it. We're just kind of getting it in position. And then we're gonna run our wire now all the way back to the amp so we know the exact length. Okay, so I'm gonna add a VHB to the bottom of my fuse here. And I'm just gonna remove the backing. And again, I'm not connecting this to the battery. I am just placing it here so that it's ready to go for me. And I'm gonna keep this off to the side. And what I've done, and I'll grab that, is I've just, on the body itself, I've connected the fuse so that it has a strong point to hold it in place. Now I need to run this power lead all the way back to the amp. So what I'm gonna do, you can see here that there's a carpet and it's split here, right next to this. And I'm gonna run it along that split into the plastic here and then follow that back. In order to do that, I'm just gonna go ahead and lift up this spot right here. Go ahead and separate these like so. And then I'm gonna hand this camera back this way. And I'm gonna run my 12-volt line underneath the carpet. So I'm gonna have that underneath the carpet. And this should give me access to slide my 12-volt line underneath. And I'm gonna run this to the back. So I'll go ahead and get that in between. We're gonna go ahead, slide that in, and I'm gonna lift on this plastic and slide this underneath the carpet and into the plastic. And then I'm gonna come around here I'm gonna gently lift up on this. Get this out of the way. And what I'm gonna go ahead and do here, in the plastic here, that I'm gonna run the positive wire under this. Because I removed that trim and the trim here, there is a little bit more flexibility here. So I'm just gonna push that underneath, and this is a tight squeeze, so I can't really show this video, but I'm just basically gonna pop that wire underneath this and follow this trim back. So I'll do that now. All right, so I went ahead and I got it over the hump. Running it from the carpet, the split, to the plastic's really easy. There's a little bit of a hump here, right where this B-pillar comes down to the carpet. It does get stuck there, so you kind of have to use like a trim tool to kind of help push it in, and then it slides underneath, and then it's fine. And then as we lift this up, we're just gonna run this wire back. Along this trim, and actually the rest of this is pretty straightforward because there's plenty of space. And we're just going to run this back inside this trim, the trim panel, come up to here, and there's actually a little bit of a gap here, so we're just going to go ahead and lift this up and run it in like so. And you might be wondering why we supply so much extra 12-volt cable. It's because the same kit will work with Gen 1, and Gen 1 requires more cable length to make it all the way to this run. So we got it here. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is now open this up to make it a little easier to see. And we're sliding the 12-volt now here. So we went from the trim down through this gap here, down through here, over into here, over the hump, underneath the seat, through the carpet split, and now we're here. So I'm gonna go ahead, create the correct length, which looks like about here. I'm gonna cut this, add a crimp to it of a fork connector, and I'm gonna go ahead and connect that. All right, so I added a fork connector to here. I am loosening the 12-volt connection, and I'm gonna go ahead and slide that in, and I'm gonna go ahead and close that up. And that's in place. Okay, so we've got the signal connected, the ground, positive, and my speaker connectors. Now, technically, we could close up everything, but we're gonna do a test first. So we're gonna go ahead and connect the 12-volt battery. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead, there is a plastic cover here on the positive side, and there's 3 points of connection, 1, 2, and 3. I'm gonna go ahead and disconnect, pop those clips out to get access to it. Please be very careful at this moment in time, because now we're dealing with live voltage and you want to be very careful. So where I connected my sub and amp to is going to be this connection right here. And I'll show you. It's going to be this connection right here. What I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to get help, and I'm going to hold down on this wire. Okay, when completed, it should look like this. My positive wire is connected there, and my fuse is there, and my wire is gonna run along this crack here. Okay, let's go ahead and test it. You should see power when it's on. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna play some music, but this is gonna go mute because we can't play copyrighted music. And we're gonna make sure it works. Go ahead. All right, let's go ahead and set the crossover. So what we're gonna do is set this crossover to halfway. We don't want all the signal to come through, so we're gonna set this to halfway. And then we're gonna set the gain about halfway as well. And then we're gonna make sure that my input level is on high. So pushed in, it's high. So we're gonna have halfway for the gain, so up to about 125 is what we're trying to aim for. So we're gonna just have that a little bit past halfway. We'll have bass boost, maybe a little bit up, about a quarter, and we'll have gain about halfway. So make sure input level is pushed in for high, gain half, a little bit past halfway for frequency crossover and bass boost. Test the sound, make sure that it sounds good to you, and before closing this up. All right, and as you're working on this, you can mess with the gain and everything depending on what you want. Just dial it in to where you want it. We're just trying to make sure that we're not getting too much sound. We don't want to overpower the speakers, so we're just kind of messing with the gain right now, getting it where we're wanting. For this user, we're just increase the gain slightly more and making sure that we get a good balance here. So with the remote, we can go ahead and control that a little bit more. Okay, so what I'm gonna want is to come in right about here and attach, I'm gonna VHB the remote here. So here's the remote, and it just connects to the back. So I'm gonna just VHB it approximately right here, so it's within arm's reach of while I'm driving, and that just connects to the back. So I'm gonna need just about that much extra length here, and I'm gonna basically slide it behind this panel and slide it all the way back, similarly to the positive wire that we did on the passenger side. So I'll do that now. And I'm gonna pull on this panel, slide my wire down. Until I get to the ground. Okay, once I get there, and that is enough wire there. Now this can slide underneath really easily. And I'm just sliding it underneath the trim panel here. And I'm going to use some trim tools just to lift up on it to help slide this cable back. And you'll notice that because it's so much smaller, it is significantly easier. Same thing here, make sure that we slide in between the B pillar and the seatbelt. And same idea as the passenger side. I'm just gonna basically follow this trim up, go behind the carpet, and get it into this area here, okay? We are now done with this side on the trim, so I'm gonna go ahead, pull that over a little bit so that's ready to go. And I'm gonna connect the remote wire to where it says remote base. Whoop. And you'll hear it make some noise. Now we can go ahead and put the bucket in, the trim in, screw everything down, and button all this up. Okay, so what we're gonna do before putting in the seat, we're gonna just make sure that this plastic piece is all the way down, and that way it doesn't run into any problems. There's a little metal rail here, and we're trying to get this plastic underneath that rail. So, and I'll show you that here. So the plastic here, there's a plastic and then there's a metal rail. That needs to slide underneath that so it doesn't get in the way of the seat. So we're gonna do that really quick. Okay, there it goes. Let me see. All right, so that's completely flush and down, and I apologize that it's in the dark, but we're in a very dark spot here, okay? Now we're gonna let the seat go back down gently. I'm gonna line these up. And make sure our plastic's in the right spot, which it is. Okay, so let's make sure that these can go in. And this side as well. And we're not going to tighten these, we're just going to thread these in just a little bit, seat them just a little bit. Make sure that they're threading. This side's in. And notice I'm doing this by hand just to make sure that it goes in. All right, that's good. We're gonna go to the front. We'll insert the front ones and then start tightening everything down. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and thread the front bolts on. And again, notice I'm not using the wrench. I'm making sure these go in. We definitely do not want to strip either these bolts or the captive nuts that they go into. This would be a horrible thing to have to get repaired. So we're making sure it's good. And then I'm gonna go ahead, and since I have the back already started threaded, I can go ahead and tighten these down. And now that the front's tightened down, we're gonna go ahead and tighten down the rear. So we're gonna go ahead and slide the bucket, or this bucket in. Move the seat belts out of the way. Okay, and we're just gonna clip this in. It should hear some clips along the edge here. Clip it in. Clip, clip. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and insert the 3 bolts on this side. Go ahead and just put these here so we don't lose them. And there's 4 of these on this side. Okay, so there's the 4 screws. Okay, so now we're gonna go ahead and put in the trim pieces. We're gonna do the trim along the edge here first that covers up all these pieces. Then we're gonna do this back piece. So, all right, so this is a little bit easier to kind of get in. Same idea, we want to kind of lift up and kind of get it in place, and then you'll feel it slide in. It's easier to put it in than it is to take it out. And we're just going to go ahead and drop these clips in. As I said earlier, this might rattle on you. It depends on the truck. You might want to add some felt either underneath this or on top of it just to kind of keep pressure on it when the seat's closed. We'll get the other side. Same idea. And I'm gonna switch with my assistant here to make sure that that side goes in first, and then we'll do the rest of the clips. So I'm gonna lift up on the back side and push in. At the same time, kind of, there it goes. These clips are the worst part of the vehicle across the board. Every other one goes in nicely though. You can see, it looks completely OEM. We retain the bucket here for storage. We're gonna take the longer side. You're gonna have the holes here. It's gonna go vertically into this. I'm just gonna click this back, pop, pop. Clips in like that. We're gonna do the same for the passenger side. And this one kind of rotates in on this one. We can go ahead and drop the seats. And then let's pull back the rubber. Get my plastic trim back in place. Let's do the same here. Pulling back the rubber all the way around. I'm gonna line this up. There's 3 clips here. There's one really long one and then 2 smaller ones. pull back the rubber, make sure that looks good. There we go. Do the front, just set. Okay, so we are going to VHB the remote now. So my goal is just to kind of put it right here so it's easy access. So you'll see a little bit of the wire, but that's just for easier access. So I'm gonna go ahead and put some VHB tape here, connect it here, and Bob's your uncle.